I think we're a lot safer today, certainly than we were 10 years ago, certainly than we were before 9/11, because we're aware of the problem. Are we safer than we were 5 years ago? That's a hard time period to measure. We have available to us electronic surveillance techniques that were not available to us back certainly before 9/11 because they weren't in use. At the same time, for every move that we make, the other side is making moves as well. And so it's a constant back and forth in which they make progress, we make progress. And so after a while, you start wondering how much safer you're getting on an incremental basis. The advice I think that I would give to the administration and to the Justice Department is to, first of all, treat unlawful combatants, treat people who are engaged in, we're talking about national security now, treat people who are engaged in terrorism initially as intelligence assets. Try to find out as much as you can about who sent them, where they came from, where they were trained, who else is involved, whether there are any other plots, and so on. And then worry about the question of how it is and where it is that you're going to prosecute them. The first concern, I think, has to be with intelligence gathering. Well, I think right now we have this binary choice between a civilian trial and a military trial. And your question is about how we balance that choice and how we balance generally the security choices against the liberty choices. I think that we needn't be limited by this either civilian or military choice. The fact is that the Constitution permits Congress to establish courts. Congress could very well establish a court to try terrorism cases. We haven't had to do it up until now, but if this continues as an ongoing problem, then I think that that might be a better fit than military commissions. The fact is that we have used military commissions throughout our history from the Revolutionary War until today. We used them during World War II, but we've never done it on a sustained basis. And candidly, I don't think, and President Bush has said this in his book, so I feel free to say it myself, I don't think the military's heart is in this. This is something that's very different from their usual mandate. They're there to win wars and fight wars. They're not there to maintain a parallel justice system. And there's no career path. There are no institutions set up within the military to do this on an ongoing basis. So I think that the military, in a sense, is ill-suited to carry this burden on a long-term basis going forward. That said, we could establish this other system of courts staffed by Article III judges, but with more liberal, if you will, more lenient evidentiary rules that would allow us to try these cases. As a society, we're going to have to figure out how much in the way of restriction we want to put up with, and that's really a matter for the democratic process, and that always goes up and down depending on the nature of the danger. There's nothing unusual about that. We faced that at other times in our history. The question is the how far back the threat to us goes, and that it goes well, and whether it's simply a matter of the Trade Center bombing and the initial Trade Center bombing in '93 and the 9/11 bombing. As I mentioned, the Muslim Brotherhood, which generates a lot of the heat underlying a lot of this movement, goes back to the 1920s and was founded, as a matter of fact, in Egypt. Going forward, it was focused principally in the Muslim world as a fundamentalist kind of organization, and the founders have regarded and do regard Western civilization as their principal enemy, and their mission to first of all get Westerners out of all parts of the Muslim world, including the Arabian Peninsula, including any place where Muslims have ever set foot, and then to establish Sharia as the rule in that part of the world and in as much of the rest of the world as they can. We're going to have to push back against that on a sustained basis. This is something we've done before. We did it in the Cold War. We did it in World War II. We can do it here as long as we focus on it. The risk for the United States of what's going on initially in Tunisia, then in Egypt and in Yemen, is substantial. On the other hand, the opportunities are substantial as well. And we face the possibility of a much happier outcome if we play our cards right than we had certainly in Iran when that went up in 1979. In Iran, we failed to support either the Shah or the military, and the military in Iran took that as a signal that we were hands off, and so they made their peace with Khomeini, who was a very attractive leader, attractive to the folks that he was leading, and attractive to many Iranians. Charismatic figure, and he was sitting in the wings ready to come back. We don't have that kind of a figure in Egypt, and we seem to be playing our cards much better with regard, certainly with respect to our relationship to the military. The Egyptian military relies on the United States substantially for its support, and those folks, I think more than anything, want to be just the same as everybody else. They want to be employed and paid. So if we can keep up a reasonably good relationship with the Egyptian military, they can see to a transition to a better system. I think obviously every advance in technology in our justice system contributes ultimately to the fairness and success of our justice system. Part of the problem is that not every case is necessarily susceptible to or is necessarily appropriate to DNA analysis, even though it might conceivably be possible. And so you may find, for example, that many juries will demand a level of investigation appropriate to CSI Miami in a 2-buy narcotics case. They'll want to know not only what the testimony is of an eyewitness who saw the hand-to-hand transaction, but how come you didn't do a DNA analysis of the brown paper bag that was turned over? And that kind of expectation can be very unrealistic and can raise the cost of those kinds of prosecutions if we're not careful. So we have to be careful of how far we allow people's expectations to outrun our ability to serve them.